Hello, and thank you for tuning into this video. Most people know VMware for our virtualization software, of course, but the majority of our software goes way beyond than just making virtualization happen. So for this video, I've asked Lee Dilworth to join me so he can explain one of our more popular solutions called VMware Site Recovery Manager. Welcome, Lee.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for inviting me. I'd love to explain this unique solution to you and possibly do a live demonstration as well.
A live demonstration, but how are you going to do a live demonstration? I don't see any physical servers.
Well, yeah, this time we've left the servers in the data center. The demo environment is quite large, and we also have quite an extensive storage setup that goes with it.
Yeah, I guess physical servers are not as portable as virtual machines. But before we dive into this setup, can you explain to me a little bit what VMware Site Recovery Manager is all about?
Yeah, sure. VMware Site Recovery Manager is a solution specifically designed for VMware virtual environments to help organizations set up fully automated site recovery plans that will manage the failover of virtual machines, work with the storage and the network layers in the case of a need to evacuate to an alternative site, when either a disaster strikes, is predicted, or even if a data center migration is required. Besides fully automating all of this, it also adds the unique capability of being able to actually test these recovery plans without impacting the production environment.
That sounds very interesting. So I'm wondering then, how are customers today creating these kind of recovery plans if they would not be using VMware virtual environments or Site Recovery Manager?
So most customers have their recovery plans documented, and usually these plans cover many manual steps that must be executed in an exact order to allow them to recover their servers. The main issues that customers relate to us are these documents are difficult to maintain, they do not change dynamically with their architecture, and usually require specific areas of expertise to understand some of these steps.
Yeah, wow, that sounds very old-fashioned and risky. So with VMware SRM, all this is documented and executed by software. Do I need a lot of extra equipment in my recovery site?
So the beauty of virtual machines is that they are hardware independent. So all that matters from a hardware point of view is that the servers at the recovery site have enough capacity to run the IT service being failed over. It does not matter if the servers use different CPU types, network cards, or even come from a different hardware vendor. As long as they can run the VMware infrastructure software on it, it will work. You could even decide you require less power in case of a disaster and therefore have less servers in the recovery site than you do at the production site.
So are there any other requirements for SRM to work? Or is it also, for instance, taking care of that my data is replicated between the production site and the alternative recovery site?
Well, the replication of the storage is still a task of the storage layer. VMware SRM does not do this for you. SRM works with nearly all of the most common storage replication solutions on the market. Once you have your storage replication in place and your virtual infrastructure built on top of it, you're ready to go. The SRM software is fully integrated with both VMware's management software as well as these storage components. SRM can not only control the VMware side of things, but also talk to the storage layer and fully automate any modifications that are needed there as well.
So all this storage replication sounds very expensive. So will I need very expensive storage kit and connections for this?
No, not really. Site Recovery Manager will work with both synchronous and asynchronous storage replication, and even supports active-active site designs as well. So you can choose from low-end storage that just replicates every few minutes, up to every few hours, right up to high-end storage that performs real-time replication.
Okay, I'm really curious now on how all this works. So can you actually show me this environment?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Let me just log into my primary site. So here we can see fairly familiar VMware environments. We have ESX servers, networking, storage, virtual machines, resource pools, all the things that we're used to seeing when we're using the VMware management software. What is key here is that the virtual machines we want to protect are sitting on replicated storage.
Okay, so they're sitting on replicated storage. Is that then all that needs to be configured to have Site Recovery Manager to work?
Almost. We first need to protect the virtual machines. So let me show you how to do that. Let me first log into Site Recovery Manager. The first thing that happens is that we need to authenticate with the Site Recovery Manager server. So it'll take a few seconds for this to occur while we swap some certificates between the two Site Recovery Manager servers. Once this occurs, we're going to be prompted for a login here to log into Site Recovery Manager. So I just enter my username and password, and then I'm now logged in to the Site Recovery Manager server. And here we can see the two sites. We can see the local site, and also we can see the paired site, or as we've been referring to these through this video, protected site and our recovery site. So to protect our virtual machines, we need to create a protection group. So I'll show you very quickly how to do this. It's very simple. So we essentially come into this screen here where we have the protection groups, and we just right click. Here we can see we can create a new protection group, so we'll do that. And then we'll be presented with a small box that will allow us to actually type in the name of the protection group. Okay, so when we're creating a protection group, we need to give the protection group a useful name. So here we'll call it Site 1, which is the name of our protected site, and we'll call the protection group Test, just for the sake of the demo that we're doing. When we click on the next screen, we can actually select our data store group, which is where our virtual machines reside.
And how does it know these kind of data stores?
So these data stores are actually found by the integration with the storage layer. So we have something called our storage replication adapters, and there's one of these adapters for each of the types of storage that Site Recovery Manager supports. So once we click on the data store group here, we can see the name of the virtual machine that is within the group. So we can click next now, and now we select a destination for what we call the placeholder virtual machine. Placeholder virtual machine is something really useful for customers, as this allows them to see the two inventories side by side at both of their data centers, the protected inventory and the recovery inventory.
So this allows me actually to see a replication of the environment on the remote disaster recovery side.
Exactly, so you can see at the recovery site the VMs that you've actually protected as virtual machine icons that you're used to seeing at the protected site. So we select the data store we're going to use for these placeholders, and then we click Finish. Site Recovery Manager will now go away and it will now protect those virtual machines for me at the protected site by the creation of this protection group. And there we go, we've got a new protection group created called Site 1 Test.
So now these virtual machines are protected, what do we need to do on the recovery side to design the actual recovery plan?
Well, the two environments are already connected with each other for Site Recovery Manager, so the recovery site knows about the protected groups that we created at the protection site. So let me log into my recovery site now and show you how we set that up.
So I see that your recovery environment does already have other virtual machines in it. Why are these virtual machines there? Does that matter?
No. So you'll see that as part of the recovery plan that we make, we can also suspend non-running critical virtual machines that are running in that environment to create capacity for the failover to happen. So in my case here, I have a VMware Lab Manager environment running at my DR site, and this can be automatically suspended when I have a disaster.
So with SRM, I can actually use all my servers much more efficiently, including the servers I have in my recovery site, because I can use them for test and development purposes.
Yes, exactly. So let me show you how to create a recovery plan if we just log it back into the Site Recovery Manager server at the DR site.
Okay.
So now we're logged into Site Recovery Manager at the recovery site, we simply need to create a recovery plan for the virtual machines that we protected a minute ago. So to do that, we can simply click on the recovery plans icon there, and then it's as simple as hitting the Create Recovery Plan button. So when I do this, you'll see that again, as with the protection group, it asks me for a name. So for continuity, I'll give it the same name, Site 1 Test, and then we can basically click Next. First interesting thing here is that the Site Recovery Manager server at the recovery site already knows about all of the protected groups from the primary site.
And this is because we did this on the primary site and that's automatically being written in and...
Exactly. So always remember that the two Site Recovery Manager servers are talking to each other between the two sites. Hence, we know about the protected virtual machines at this site. So we'll pick our Site 1 Test protection group that we created a minute ago. And we now get some options to change some timeouts that maybe will speed up or slow down the recovery depending on what we want Site Recovery Manager to do. If we're happy to take the defaults, we'll take them and we'll just go through to the next screen. So here we have the test network screen. So in this part of the recovery plan, we actually tell Site Recovery Manager which network to use for testing.
So I can actually do a test of that recovery plan you just made without any impact on the production server environment?
Yes, so you simply define an alternate network and that is the one that Site Recovery Manager will use during the test.
Okay.
The final screen in creating the recovery plan is where we tell Site Recovery Manager, if we need to, which virtual machines need to be suspended to free up CPU memory capacity.
So this is like the lab manager environment that we had there, that you can actually power that off or suspend it, so we free up the capacity to run the DR environment.
That's exactly right. So once we've selected the virtual machines that we need to in this list, then we simply click the Finish button, and that's our recovery plan created.
That's it? That's all was needed to make a recovery plan?
Exactly. You can see the recovery plan there. So we have a new recovery plan, Site 1 Test. And if we look on the tabs on the right-hand side, we can see we now have the most interesting tab, which is recovery steps. So
this is a graphical workflow of actually everything that will happen.
Yeah, so a little bit like your manual steps that customers used to have to document and update and maintain. Site Recovery Manager now has these steps in a workflow built for you, and you're free to customize these steps to actually match your production workflow that you want to invoke during DR. So for example, let's take an Active Directory virtual machine as our example. If we want to start that one first, we can simply move the virtual machine up using the arrows here and place it in the high priority category. So we select the VM, we select the up arrow, and we've moved the virtual machine into the high priority category.
So that will make sure that when we actually have a disaster, that the domain controller first gets powered on, then a second tier of virtual machines, and then the lesser important virtual machines.
Exactly right. So you can now structure the order in which you want the virtual machines to restart as part of the recovery process.
Wow, that really looked very easy and fast, creating one of these recovery plans. But now you have created one of these recovery plans. How can I actually prove to the business that all this will work, and do I still need to come in the weekend to test all this?
No, one of SRM's biggest strengths is its ability to perform non-disruptive testing by leveraging your storage's capability to create copies of replicated devices and also designate test networks. SRM allows our customers to test DR during their normal working day.
But that sounds risky. Surely splitting up the storage replication connection between my protected and recovery sites exposes me to data loss?
No, as I said, in testing mode, SRM does not split the link. All the testing is performed in a controlled, isolated way at your recovery site, utilising your storage array's snapshot capability and also SRM's ability to place the recovered VMs in a test network, meaning they will not clash with the production environment.
Okay, come on, I need to see to believe this. Can you actually show me one of these recovery plans in action?
Of course, let's run one now in test mode. Let's just log in and take a look. All we simply do is we select the recovery plan here on the left, so we select our Site 1 test recovery plan, and then you can see at the top of the screen here we've got these two buttons, test and run. So we're going to be doing a Site Recovery Manager test, so we use the test button. So we simply click that button, we accept the yes prompt to invoke the test, and now the test starts. So the first thing that's interesting to look at is that first step that it's going to execute in test mode is prep the storage. This is at the point when it's going to the storage array and it's going to produce those snapshots that we talked about earlier to allow us to do this non-disruptive testing. The next thing that has happened, and you can see in the tasks pane at the bottom here, is that all of the tasks that you would normally manually have to do to recover your virtual machines will be performed before you by Site Recovery Manager. So this will be things like rescanning the HBAs, refreshing the VMFS data stores, and all of those kind of things that you would have to have done manually before. The next thing that we're going to see is that our Active Directory virtual machine will be the first virtual machine to power on.
And that was because you put it into the primary group and therefore it's powering on that first.
Exactly. So now we can see that the Active Directory virtual machine is powered on. The next thing that Site Recovery Manager will do, it'll move down to the normal priority category and it'll power on the other virtual machines in this recovery
all the other
plan.
virtual machines are getting powered
Exactly. And so now we can see that the other virtual machines are powering on.
But are you absolutely sure this has no impact on my production server environment?
Completely sure. So remember what I said earlier about Site Recovery Manager does things in an isolated way. So we can take a look at the recovery site now and actually show you that the recovery VMs are online, and also at the production site we can still see that the live virtual machines are also up and running and completely unaffected by any of the testing that we've been doing. So let's just take a look at that now and I'll show you. So here we can see at the recovery site that the virtual machines are now up and running and they're ready for testing in DR. But also if we flip to the virtual center screen for the primary site, the production site, we can still see if we look in the inventory that the virtual machines that we're testing, the Active Directory virtual machine and the other virtual machines that we recovered, are actually still powered on, performing their normal daily tasks in the production environment without any disruption from Site Recovery Manager. So what this means for customers is that they can now do full end-to-end testing during the normal business day without having to do all of this work on a weekend and come in out of hours to do this. So now we've completed our DR testing, the one thing that we need to do is reset this recovery plan so that we can run it again should we need to. Site Recovery Manager makes that very easy for us. As you can see, we have a continue URL here. All we do is we click this URL, Site Recovery Manager will then reset the recovery plan ready for the next run.
Well, thank you very much for demonstrating this, Lee. I have to say it looks extremely easy to create these recovery plans. I guess the only thing I now have to do is go back to my application owners and actually prove to them that their applications are protected.
Something else that Site Recovery Manager can do for you is generate those reports, and they are done automatically every time you invoke one of these recovery plans.
So Site Recovery Manager doesn't only automate the actual process of site recovery, it also creates all the documentation for me?
Exactly. Site Recovery Manager automates all of that for you as well.
Now that really is fantastic. Well, I have to say thank you very much for coming by and showing all this.
Thank you, Richard, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for tuning into this video, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on the next topic.